Food Talk. Here we have Sheshu in the studio. 안녕하세요.
Good evening.
Have you ever heard of this term, the 공감 피로, compassion fatigue?
No, but I've definitely felt it before. I like that it has there's a term for it, and I definitely I've felt it before. But more often, I feel like I give it to some people sometimes. I think I can unload. I think I can unload like a pro sometimes.
받는 것보다 주는 걸로. 그럴 수도 있죠. Well, in any case, let's get to our food talk. 오늘의 topic, 오늘의 주제는 뭘까요?
오늘의 주제는 it is something that is, I think, so intricately woven into the 겨울 문화 here in Korea. And not just here in Korea. You have the idea of this food roasting over an open fire in Christmas carols.
맞아요.
I think something that's enjoyed all around the world because this is the time it's in season. And of course, we are talking about 밤.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Jack Frost nipping at your nose.
맞아요. 굉장한 한국적인 간식이라고 해야 되나? But it's also, as you said, it's all over the world.
Yeah.
But if you grew up near a 한인 market, if you're abroad, then you can smell that from meters away.
Absolutely. And actually, Korea is one of the world's largest producers of chestnuts.
아, 그래요?
Yeah, after China, we're one of the largest. And one of the reasons why I think the only place where you don't really see too much of it, like above the southern hemisphere, chestnuts don't really grow in warmer climates, but like in Europe and but in North America, there was a big chestnut blight that wiped out a lot of the trees over there. So I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see it as much nowadays. But chestnuts are still very much like a Rockwellian, kind of like symbol of Christmas, like the very classic symbol, but you don't see it so much nowadays. But they're all over Europe.
Oh, okay.
You see a lot in European desserts as well. And things like chestnuts and stuffing is very much like an English
그쵸.
thing too.
Yeah. 요즘 제철인가요?
Absolutely. We're right in the middle of it. So the season for chestnuts is between September to December.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, we are right in the middle of the chestnut season. I've actually had it raw, and I love it.
It's really good. I think, and that's the thing that we do here in Korea that we don't see very much outside of Korea is that chestnuts are phenomenal raw. And we'll get into a little bit of that later when we talk about the chestnut 요리 that you can do.
Yeah.
But you're right. Right now it's the season. 그래서 if you want to go out and pick chestnuts, 밤 따기 is a great activity. So like 사과 따기, 배 따기, 귤 따기. These are all kind of like, you go out to the orchards, you go out to the farms, and when you pick it yourself, like 단다, like it's literally to pick. So, like fruit plus 따기, is that activity of going out for the weekend. And it's a great way to spend the weekend. Just make sure that you're dressed, in
appropriately.
Thick, armored clothing. Nothing delicate. Like, do not wear a cashmere sweater.
Yeah, sure.
to 밤따기.
Some good, jeans and some boots as well. You might want to get some gloves. 밤따기, yeah, chestnut picking could be something to do this weekend and for the coming weekends up until January, I guess. But what do chestnuts actually represent? Because they're in a lot of festivities and a lot of holidays.
Yeah, you see them as a lot of ceremonial ornamentation, let's put it that way, right? So I think the one that a lot of people know about is, so in Korea, there's the pebek ceremony.
Oh, 맞아요.
Yeah, it's part of the wedding. It's part of the wedding. And it's a very traditional ceremony where the bride, the groom, and then the mothers and fathers of, from each respective side, there's a whole ceremony involving, bowing and pouring of drinks. And it's part of the much more traditional side of the Korean wedding. And part of this is you throw chestnuts and jujube, so 밤 and 대추, into the hanbok of the bride. And the number of chestnuts or and or techu that they catch is supposedly the number of sons and or daughters that they're going to bear. Chestnuts being sons and techu, jujubes, being daughters. So
It's 100% accurate, by the way.
I hope not, because we're having 17 children then, if that's the case. I don't know. My wife is like, I'm going to catch as many as I can.
That's right.
Just to freak them out as much as possible.
Play the game. Why not?
It's true, it's a curio, right? It's a fun thing to do now. I don't think any of it really is taken very seriously as like a portent of the future.
Right.
But one place where you do see it on the more serious side is on the 차례상, on the kind of the ritualistic, the ancestral rites table. And there it kind of represents abundance, and every food on the table has a different meaning. Even like the direction in which the fish head is pointing means something. And so all of the different elements have some kind of meaning to them. And then in this case, chestnuts, they kind of represent abundance and like a wish for, like a 풍부하고, like a 되게 편한.
A very full life,
yeah, very
I guess.
full life. Yeah.
Full with children, with sons, as well as just full of life. Adrian Linga says, I wonder how chestnuts taste like. Never had one in real life.
Oh, yeah. They're hard to describe in the sense that they are a nut, but they're not quite a nut. I wouldn't compare them to a peanut, right? Like
I would compare it more to like a potato.
Yeah, almost like a sweet potato or like a root vegetable.
맞아요.
When they're cooked, but when they are raw, they do have more of a nuttiness.
I guess so. But the texture is kind of like because you can bite into it.
Because it has a snap rather than a crunch.
Oh, yeah, you're very right.
And they're not oily like a lot of nuts are too. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is very much, I think, more like a root vegetable, and they have a lot of really great natural sweetness. They take on a great smoky flavor too if you roast them.
Yeah. But I mean, we were talking about, 밤따기 as well. And the reason why you want to wear some gloves when you go chestnut picking is that you think that it's very smooth because that's how they come at the grocery stores. But if you see them in the wild,
they're like land sea urchins.
They're porcupines.
They're basically tree hedgehogs. They're incredibly spiky, and yes, those spikes will hurt you.
Yeah.
So be very careful. So the spiky outsides or the burrs of the chestnut, in Korean they're called the 밤가시. And in Korea, there's like a traditional way of peeling them, and that's you take them between your feet, so your shoes, and you kind of press down on either side with your shoes to kind of release that smooth nut on the inside. Yeah,
I guess there's always a way to do it, whether it's for the 밤가시, the thorns or the prickly parts, but also the shell.
The shell itself, right? So that's always
어려워요.
So you have a couple of ways of doing it. The easiest way to peel them is, of course, by cooking them. So
is it though? 요리해도 얇죠도.
Yes, it's not easy, but definitely easier than peeling them raw, which we'll get into a little bit later. But to peel them after they've been cooked, the trick is that you have to make a 칼집. So
맞아요.
A 칼집 literally means a scoring. So like when you score, say like a piece of fish. When you put the knife marks into a piece of fish so it cooks evenly, that's a 칼집. And in this case, you'll make a 칼집 as well in a 십자, and so in a cross shape. And so if you do that at the bottom of the shell, then it will supposedly kind of start splitting open on its own when it's cooked. Doesn't always happen though, unfortunately.
Right. But I mean, you could still put your knife in between and then just peel it back.
Right. But then there's also another layer of kind of more of a fibrous skin on the inside too. So if you're unlucky or if the chestnut isn't perfectly ripe or if you don't cook it enough, sometimes that will stick to the nut rather than coming off with the shell. So the easiest way to do it is to make a 칼집 on the shell, which in itself is a huge pain. Like, it takes it takes a good amount of force for each one.
It's a tough shell.
And you have to make sure not to cut yourself too. So use a very sharp knife because there is nothing more dangerous than a dull knife. because the duller it is, the more pressure you have to apply.
Right.
So then you want to 불려 in cold water, so soak it in cold water. So like 불리다, so to soak something in cold water. So 불려 it in cold water for about 15 minutes. So you have a couple of options then. You can steam, boil, or even microwave
아,
them.
그래요? 전자레인지 돌릴 수 있어요?
전자레인지에서도 돌려도 돼요.
Wow.
And that makes sense. Like to me, like any application in the microwave that is just purely an application of just heat and steam, then it is perfectly fine for the microwave.
Right.
Baked potatoes, perfectly fine to do in the microwave.
I put them in my microwave too.
Yeah. Or you can roast them in the oven or in an open fire, and that's what's going to give you that really nutty,
That flavor.
Flavor.
불맛.
But here's how they do it in the restaurants. Deep fryer.
튀겨요.
튀김기에다가 그 레스토랑에서 그 가게에서 튀김기에다가 많이 넣어요. Because it's so much, it's like an intense heat that happens right away. And then it makes the shell more brittle on the outside. So that's by far the easiest way to peel a chestnut.
In oil.
In oil.
Oh.
Yeah, but so in a deep fryer. But if you're doing it at home, don't bother. And
Do it
if you have a deep fryer that's running in your restaurant already ready to go. But it's going to be more of a pain to set up a deep fryer than it is to peel. But to peel it raw, so there is like a specialized tool, a 밤가위. Have you ever seen one of these?
Yes, I have seen. I never really bothered to buy, but I think whenever you have, these. I mean, the reason why you don't buy palm is because it's 귀찮아, right?
Right.
If you have a palm 가위, then what is it?
I feel like that's one of those things. I'm always meaning to buy one because it'd make it so much easier. So what makes it different from a regular pair of scissors? So only one side has a blade, and the other side kind of has teeth that kind of hold on to the shell. So it holds on and then you slice it and then you hold on and slice it and you kind of like make your way around the whole palm. And that way you can get a really clean, peeled, raw chestnut.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just peeling it by hand with a knife like you would peel anything else. And you just get hours. You're going to get arthritis from it.
Let's take a look at some 밤 요리s that we can do.
Right. So I think the classic one is 밤구이. And, the reason why it's such a winter... it's such strong winter associations is because of the way it smells when it's roasting on the street.
Right.
It's a siren's call.
It really is, yeah.
And then we talked about how good raw chestnuts are. And I think one of the best ways to have chestnuts raw is in a 밤무침.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever had a 밤무침 before?
No.
Yeah, it's like a 파무침 or any other type of muchim. So if you've listened to the show before, we've talked about muchims before. They're kind of just like, they're not quite a kimchi or banchan. They're almost, I guess, a Korean equivalent of a salad in the sense that it's a vegetable or an ingredient that's just briefly tossed into like a strong, assertive seasoning, usually like a gochugaru and like 간장 base in there. And usually there's a fair amount of sweetness, but with the 밤무침, you'll slice it thin. So you get these nice, really crunchy bits against this kind of sweet and spicy dressing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to cook chestnuts. And I'm sure you guys already have your own recipes, but in Korea, the 밤밥도 있고.
밤바스, which is kind of like almost like a 밤 like batang.
Oh,
so it's like a candied chestnut.
Oh,
and it's eaten as a snack on its own, or even eaten as a sweet banchan as well.
Wow. So many ideas to make 밤 during this chestnut season. I hope you guys can get creative and try to get in the best times of chestnuts during this November or December season.
It goes well in anything. And I'll tell you what, for our non-Korean listeners out there, if you want to try a chestnut for the first time, get some peeled ones and throw them in some kind of stew.
Well, there you go.
Perfect introduction.
Well, thank you very much, Sheshu. We'll see you again next week.
See you then.